Great. Well, thank you all for coming today to our monthly OWASP LA meetup, our August 25th meetup, the talk on security, why it shouldn't be a secret and why transparency matters. Real quick, before I introduce our speaker, I'm going to have a brief forward. First, want to give a big shout out to the current OWASP LA board of directors who help make these meetings possible. So big thank you there. And for those of you who don't know OWASP, here's a quick intro video on the organization.
OWASP is a nonprofit that stands for the Open Web Application Security Project. OWASP is a community of developers, technologists, and evangelists improving the security of software through tools and resources. OWASP has 100+ active projects, and new project applications are submitted weekly. Projects are open source and are built by our community of volunteers, people just like you. Community and networking. There are hundreds of local chapters worldwide and thousands of members. Meetings are free and open to everyone. They include training, talks, and networking opportunities. Education and training. OWASP hosts many events each year. They are a great way to improve your skills, build your professional network, and learn about new trends in the industry. One of the many ways you can get involved is to become a member. The membership benefits include discounts for events and trainings, your own OWASP email address and Google Workspace access, a vote in our OWASP Global Board elections. And recently, OWASP added a brand new member benefit, access to hands-on application security training through the OWASP Secure Flag Open Platform. Join us and become a member today.
And then please be sure to follow us. You can follow our meetup, subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to our Twitter. This recording will be posted on YouTube, so you can check it out there as well. The OWASP 20th anniversary celebration is coming up September 24th. You can check it out at 20thanniversary.owasp.org. Pretty exciting. And if anyone's interested in partnering with OWASP, interested in sponsorship, you can contact us at sponsorship.la@owasp.org. Your logo marketing write-up will be in our meetup site and will be visible to the 2,300 member mailing list. And yeah, without further ado, Wayne, very excited to have Wayne here today. So big thank you. Wayne's currently based in Atlanta. He reads a book a week, and he's currently obsessed with playing Overcooked 2 on the Nintendo Switch. And you might have to tell us more there. He's a director of engineering at GitLab and has more than 20 years of experience in engineering and security. And he actually is a veteran of 3 successful startups and has experienced multiple areas within healthcare and finance. So big thank you again, Wayne. Yeah, I can go ahead and turn things over to you here.
Thanks, Aiden. Really appreciate it. How's my audio, by the way? Can you hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Great. So I'm gonna run some experiments with some new things. Let's see how that looks. All right, so really glad to be here. Thank you. So we're gonna talk about why security shouldn't be a secret and why transparency matters. So you already heard a little bit about me, a little more about me. If you're interested, you can check out these links. So first, let's meet Carl. Carl is an engineer I worked with many years ago. He was on one of my teams, and he really wanted to impress his coworkers, and he bought a new car. And he loved playing driving games, and he felt he was a real driving aficionado. This was his gaming rig for driving games. So he bought a new Corvette. Really proud of it. And he really wanted to show it off to his coworkers and drive around and have a lot of fun with it. So Carl lives in this 2-garage house, and he was on his way to work. He bought the car on Saturday. He was on his way to work on Monday. His roommate, who also worked at the company, it's not me, said, "Hey, Carl, do you want me to come with you? Do you want me to go with you? to work so you can show it. I was like, no, I'm in a really big rush. So Carl got in his car. He hit the button for the garage door, started revving the engine, and what do you think happened? Carl went right through the garage door. He opened up the wrong door. He opened up the one on the left. The car was in the one on the right. He didn't look behind him. He didn't have that feedback and that transparency from having more eyes on what he was doing in order to have better results. So we're going to talk about today, who and what is GitLab, a little bit about us so you can set the stage on what we do and how we do it and understand how we apply transparency. Examples of transparency and security specifically, and also on the business side, and we'll talk about both. What are the benefits of transparency? What are the risks? How you can increase transparency in your organization, we're also going to cover. What I'd like to do is in Zoom chat, let's do a quick poll. If everybody could say, what do they actually, just type it in. You need less, the same, or more transparency and security in your organization. I'd like to get a feel for that, just watching the Zoom chat. See if you could type one of those three in the chat, that would be great. Seeing a lot of more. Whole lot of more. Okay. I'm glad to see that. Almost unanimous on more. So a couple quotes about transparency that I like. Honesty and transparency can make you vulnerable. Be honest and transparent anyway, by Mother Teresa. And by the Dalai Lama, a lack of transparency results in distrust and a deep sense of insecurity. Apply in general, perhaps, but also to us folks in the security industry. So a little bit about GitLab. What is GitLab? We're the open DevOps platform. It allows people to collaborate, manage their code, manage their continuous integration, their continuous deployment, their security, their monitoring, their performance, epic planning, issue planning, all things agile. And it's one platform that does it all. And I've been at GitLab for about 2 years. It's also it's based on an open source project. There's a commercial version and an open source version. So who and where is GitLab? Same challenges that Aiden had is this little video gonna participate? Okay, so we are all over the place. We have 1,300 team members. There's a little interactive map. We have 1,300 team members in 65 countries and regions. So quite a few spread across the world. My team is about 45 people, and I think we have people in 14 time zones just in my relatively small team. Company has been all remote since 2015, has 0 offices. The office, there's one business address. It's actually in downtown San Francisco. It has mailboxes, etc. Just when you get our mail. It's an open source product that we work on ourselves from employees, of course, but also we get thousands and thousands of contributions a year from the open source community because people can use it for free and also want to contribute, and also customers do as well. We have to vet all those changes, not only if they come from our employees, but from our community contributors for multiple things, including quality and security. And the product is also interesting. It's delivered in various methods. Customers can host it themselves. Customers can run it on our cloud services and our .com service. There's also a free community edition for anyone to run themselves, which doesn't have some of the commercial features, but has quite a few features. There's also free accounts on our cloud services. A lot of people use that if they don't need the paid features, or if they're an open source project, if they are also a nonprofit. And there are many open source projects hosted there, including Kali Linux, which is pretty neat. And free accounts for specific open source projects, which I mentioned. So what are the values of the company? We've got 6 core values. Some of these are pretty common. You see them across many different companies. At GitLab, there's 2 that I think are pretty unique to us. We have collaboration, results, efficiency, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, very common at many different companies, but also iteration, where we work to do the smallest thing possible and get it into production or get it into the handbook that we use to operate, et cetera, and work very iteratively. And also transparency. We are extremely transparent. And previously, I came from a security company that was not transparent just about most things, and that was what they needed to do and was appropriate. GitLab is extremely transparent. It was initially very, very shocking to me when I came to the company. What do we say about transparency? We're open about as many things as possible. One thing you'll see in a lot of these slides is links. These are not just internal company links. These are links that anybody in the public can see. So we're transparent about as many things as possible. This gives us a lot of collaboration with each other. We're not worried about the permissions inside the company, with our community contributors, with our customers, with the general public. And it really, really gives us a lot of collaboration. And it surprises me sometimes how it really benefits them. So an example is quite a few of our team meetings are public. We actually put them on YouTube streaming live. And who watches these? Bunch of, me and a number of folks on my team talking about, the bugs we found, what we're working on, et cetera. It turns out it was a great recruiting tool where potential employees looked at the videos to see, do I want to work on this team or not, which was great. And it's more than that. That's one example. I'll show you some selected examples in what we do in terms of transparency. The strategy, the company strategy. Most of our company strategy is public. Many folks would be shocked by how public this is if they hadn't seen this before, but it does allow us to effectively communicate amongst team members, customers, open source users, the general public, attackers, competitors, etc. So we see potential partners. We see all of these. So some examples I pulled off the public handbook. Our 3-year strategy is there. What we're currently doing, what we're planning to do in the future. Our principles, how we operate. And one of my favorite quotes, it's actually at the bottom of the page. Why is this page public? It's because transparency is one of our values, and we focus more on execution than on keeping secrets in order to protect information. So strategy is a commodity, execution is an art. We feel we're pretty good at execution. And that's one of the reasons we can be very transparent. About requirements, let's get into some details. So requirements in epics and associated issues are not confidential by default, not confidential by default. If a security issue needs to be confidential to the public until it's fixed, we handle it as such. We keep it confidential until then. For example, we want, if it's easily exploitable, either it's found by our own team members or reported by the public via HackerOne or a pen test we do, et cetera, we'll keep it confidential until we have a fix available that we can install ourselves and also make available to our customers. We also, and our other users, requirements are available to everybody at the company. So the benefits are we get feedback from everyone with access. The collaboration improves the overall plan. We also get feedback afterwards from the public, from customers, from free users, et cetera. So it gets there, even if they don't have much to say about it, it gets their trust. Some of the risks, sometimes something is not marked as confidential until after it should have been. It leaves us open for that time to exploit window with negative outcomes. However, in my knowledge, it's only been a theoretical risk for us. It hasn't actually resulted in anything negative. So here's an epic we worked on to provide developers with access to production-like data. Now, I'm sure most of you have been a part of discussions like that or benefit from it or would like to see this. So there were not only a number of people watching the issue as we worked on it, but also collaborating on it, which is great. It really made this process much stronger. But transparency in code. Merge requests that are part of the community edition are public. We also have a bug bounty program. We happen to use HackerOne and publish the details after the fix is available to customers, as I mentioned. Merge request changes to the code are available to everyone at the company, even if it's a major security risk, and the entire company, not just the engineering team working on it, not just the engineering team overall, but the sales team, the marketing team, et cetera. The great thing is we get feedback from everyone with access. Think of Carl, and now he didn't get feedback from multiple people and ended up driving through the door. This collaboration improves the time to resolve, the quality and toughness, the appropriateness of the fix, the thoroughness of the fix. So an example, here's one, this is all public information again, one HackerOne report from the past, the bug that we filed internally. So it was one report from the bug bounty program, one issue, 7 merge requests, 10 people collaborating on it, commenting on it, and 25 people watching it, which was great. It was both employees and the public, especially after, and customers after it was released. They wanted to know more information. It really helped us to make sure we didn't just resolve this specific issue, we resolved other similar issues and considered them, not just work on that specific one, which was great in terms of the transparency. Transparency and security testing. So we use the GitLab secure features. We call that dogfooding. We use our own product to build our own product. So we use our own security features to validate the security of our own product, including secure code scanning, dynamic scanning, dependency checking, secret scanning, container scanning, fuzz testing, licensing scanning, etc. And a lot of these are available for free and open source, not all, but a lot of them are. The results are available for all employees. It really facilitates great collaboration both inside and outside the company in finding, vetting, and resolving security issues. So an example might be that somebody on one engineering is working on some libraries out of date, and there's a vulnerability in the library. And somebody else, a completely different team that's completely uninvolved with where that vulnerability was found, said, oh, at the previous company I worked at, we looked into that. And it was a false positive because we were using it only with a client-side vulnerability, not server-side or whatever. And they commented on it and it helped us vet them. These kinds of things happen really often. It also helps us update the security checks to make sure they have a low false positive and a low false negative rate. We get a lot of feedback on that as well. So we can iteratively not only improve the product security itself, but the product's security features that customers use. How about incident handling? Security incident handling. Security incidents are open to all employees. Similarly to merge requests and requirements, we don't hide this. We're only on a need-to-know basis. And this also really helps when there's a security issue. Like I've jumped in and commented on things, either joined Zoom calls when we're doing it synchronously, and commented on merge requests on ways to address the security issues that were found. And many at GitLab do this, and it really helps to resolve those security issues. And this is just a snapshot of the public, transparent handbook page on how we actually do security incident response. How about endpoint detection? Wow, this is an interesting one. So we, a while ago, did not have endpoint protection required on employees' laptops. So we wanted to implement this because it's good for, it's appropriate for security and compliance, and it was received by many of the company like it was the end of the world. You're not going to, are you going to be spying on me? How do I know this company is reputable? What information are you collecting about me? And again, we have team members all around the world, and different cultures and different countries have different expectations and different laws about privacy and things like this. So there was a merge request done to our company handbook, and it got hundreds of people commenting on it, saying, I really like these portions. I realize I don't like it, but I really understand it too. I am not going to accept this. We need to find a new plan, or to tell me more about what data it collects. Can I turn it off? It creates a performance issue, etc. And it took a lot of time to vet their feedback and change the processes we were planning an implementation plan somewhat based on that feedback. One example would be as some team member said, if you do this, I really want to make sure that in the unlikely event, there's a hack at the company that we're using, or a security person at GitLab is compromised themselves, I don't want them getting on my home network. So can the company pay for a router so I can separate out my work computer from my personal network? And like for the people that want that, that's fine. That was a really easy one. And there were other things about making sure the logs were available so you could see what data it was collecting, making sure that it was well tested to check for performance impact. And as we went through this, and I wasn't directly working on this, I was indirectly working on this, it was always thanking the person who gave the feedback for their feedback. They spent the time on it, telling them what you agreed with, telling them what you didn't agree with, and then telling them what you were willing and able to do about their feedback, which didn't need to address at all. And you couldn't make everybody happy doing that, because you couldn't do everything that everybody wanted. However, you could get quite a bit of it in and really get their buy-in, which is great. And I think we went from the people who commented, probably 50% very worried and 40% a little worried and 10% supportive, to about 90% supported and 10% still weren't happy about it. But we were able to address a lot of concerns. How about compliance? Our compliance framework is public. That creates trust with both customers and auditors. I didn't work directly with this team, but when I saw this, I was very impressed by it. So why don't we take a couple questions before I continue?
Any questions? If you do, please throw them down into the Zoom chat.
What what feedback did you get from the endpoint protection project that kind of surprised you or changed what you were doing?
That's a great question, Alex. So some of it was when we implemented endpoint was, who was the company? Can we trust? Some of the feedback was, did we consider open source solutions? Because we really like to prefer open source first before commercial solutions. Sometimes also the question is, should we write it ourselves? But this is not what we do for a living. So that didn't come up here. Others were, can I see the logs? Can I see the results of the testing? And can I see the logs of what this solution works? And they brought some users into a beta program and then showed them, here's what it collects, here's what it doesn't collect, etc. So we opened that up so we could be transparent about it. We also changed the implementation plans to be a slower rollout to look for performance issues. Because some weren't concerned about security or privacy of this. They were concerned about, is it going to slow down my machine? Which I can definitely relate to. So we did a slow rollout to test the performance of it. And there was some of the initial configurations, some people did have performance issues. So we were able to find that, tune it before we rolled it out to everybody. And then similar, as I mentioned, there were policies that we changed, like can I buy a home router and separate out my computer from my home network on the network? And I think there was some other feedback, for example, can I opt out of this? I really don't want this in my machine. The answer was no, because it's important for not only security, but also compliance. Another question,
Awesome.
thanks, Aiden. I put some questions, asked for questions in Meetup and got some others. So Aiden, I think they were, one was, how do we verify the code that developers write? How do we make sure that code is actually the code that's installed in production? And that's a great question. And that, I'd say, I actually am not familiar with that part of GitLab. What I believe we do, and what I've seen many companies do, including the one I worked for previously, is the build system cryptographically signs the code, the binaries that are built and the install files, etc. And then the production systems then go verify that. So they'll run checks and verify that the signature, that it was actually signed by that CA chain. Which is great to do. There's definitely been supply chain attacks that we've all heard about, and in the large, and it's a concern as well, probably for every company, not just ones who had public security issues. One challenge is a hard one. How do you make sure the developers aren't actually intentionally putting security vulnerabilities in, either accidentally or intentionally? I saw an example, and it wasn't exactly this. I saw an example recently in the news where ransomware folks were contacting employees of companies saying, if you install this ransomware, we'll pay you $10,000 in Bitcoin or something like that. And I don't know if they were successful, but they were doing that. Could you imagine them offering something like that to developers? Please insert this little bit of code and we're going to pay, $5,000. And how would you detect that? It's by a developer, the developer has the rights to do that code. So those are really challenging things. You can find some of those things via code reviews, human code reviews, which we do at GitLab. And having separate maintainers who can merge things than the developers. The maintainers are responsible for many things. Security is just one of them. Scanning the code, scanning the systems after they're running, doing HackerOne or other similar bug bounty programs, doing paid pen tests, but they're all very, that's the part that definitely worries me as well. The other, in a similar vein to that, is where are people getting their libraries from? There's lots of cases of typo squatting where either people will put libraries out there on the internet that look very similar to popular libraries, and a developer will bring that one in accidentally, or there have been intentionally compromised libraries put out there that people use, and then they bring it into their applications. I went a little bit off on a tangent there based on the question that was asked, but reminded me of those other things, and it was a great question. I think there was one other, Aiden, we got in advance.
There was one other, yeah. It was how much access is too much access, and how are you balancing giving developers access to prod systems so they can be autonomous and move fast while still limiting risk?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say the developers, give them access to as much as they need, but not more, which is not really answering the question. But I'll give an example from my past where we had a squad model, basically where there were SREs embedded with each development team. And it wasn't one SRE per development team, it was kind of one SRE for 2 or 3 development teams. And the SRE and the team members that went through the training and wanted the access, they had to be at the company a certain period of time, they would get all the way to root access on the production servers or the production VMs. So, and it really helped us resolve issues quickly, whether they're security or availability, et cetera, or quality issues. And when we did this, we also watched every command they ran, so that people knew they were being watched. So that, and I don't think we ever saw intentional harm where somebody was doing something they really shouldn't have been doing from a security perspective. It was usually accidental changes. We're able to say, hey, we scanned that, we saw that you changed, it was an availability issue. They changed the base OS configuration to solve an issue, but it actually made it so like the VM wouldn't reboot properly, which is not a good thing. So we wouldn't have caught that until a patch that needed a reboot would have happened, and the whole system would have went kaboom. And we would audit periodically, but set that expectation. And this was at a security company, and they had very stringent security controls based on who the customers were, and it worked really well. And the customers were good with it, and the auditors were as well, because we had that auditability. Because you don't want to handcuff the developers where they can't do their job, or they have to go send a ticket to another team, et cetera. So it's a real balance, and in my opinion, you have to trust the folks. You have to trust your teams, give them the access they need, make sure they know that that audits are happening, and then have some automation to advise them when they make accidental mistakes. But the benefits of giving them that access so they can solve things and research things, in my opinion, far outweighs the potential risks, security risks of doing that. That doesn't apply to every organization, of course. If you're at a bank, do you want to give that full root access to everybody on the engineering team? Probably not. But do you want to give it to a core team of people, keeping the main banking systems that are moving transactions around that access? I would say yes, because the benefits outweigh the risks. But it depends on the criticality and what an attacker might want to do to compromise a person, either by getting hired by a company or by compromising an employee who, for monetary reasons or otherwise, and getting to do things that either accidentally with the good intentions or with malicious intent.
I had one question as well. I'm curious how you line up sort of like individual performance or even team performance with the collaborative culture, because I'm assuming a engineer isn't necessarily being like, their success isn't necessarily based on how they contribute to the Jamf, epic. So I'm curious if like contributions across the organization are weighed when considering performance.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'd say, so I'm not actually on the security team at GitLab, although I work with them closely and help to build security features on the engineering team. And how engineering does it is that, or development does it specifically, is we, in the whole company primarily, measure by results, not by hours worked. And in terms of those results, we look at, it depends on the team, all development teams, we look at we call it a narrow team MR rate. What do we mean by that? Why MR is merge request, or AKA pull request, and it's team-based, not person-based. And narrow is because we don't measure, we don't take credit for community contributions, open source contributions, when we're looking at a per team rate. So that's why narrow versus wide. And we do it based on the team, not on the person, because that's a best practice and works really well. But sometimes it averages out over time. Sometimes some do a lot of spike work to investigate something, and then it looks like they're not doing much when you look at an MR rate, but it's not accurate. Or someone will do a whole bunch of small bug fixes, and they might have a really high MR rate from that. But that's also not necessarily something to brag about, because it's just by the intent. So we look at a sustained merge request rate per team. And then we also look at the, some teams look at a say-do ratio. Like the team said they could do this amount of work, and they actually were able to do this amount. And we want to aim for 70%-ish on that. You don't want a team to undercommit nor overcommit. And it gives the product managers a good feel for how predictable the team is, and when they can add more, when they should let up a bit and add less, etc. And yeah, those are the primary things.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Feel free to speak up or put it in the Zoom chat.
So I'll take some at the end as well, but I'd like to take a quick break in the middle. So what are the benefits and risks of transparency from an engineering perspective? Some of the benefits: increased collaboration. We've talked about that. The more people you have collaborating on things, the stronger it all is. Kind of the open source model, but not limited to open source. Increased team velocity. Teams can do more because they're collaborating with each other. They know what each other is working on, and it works really well. So I'll give an example of both collaboration and velocity. Is we are considering doing more with PubSub solutions in engineering. And we use Google PubSub because GitLab is primarily hosted at GCP. We have been investigating doing stuff with Kafka, either commercial or open source, we're not sure, and other things. So one of the team members created an issue saying on one of my teams, we're considering Kafka, we've heard we have PubSub, I don't know that much about it. What are other people doing at GitLab and PubSub? And one issue created, it showed up in an engineering week and review document that all engineers are asked to read once a week, to update the various teams. 50 or 60 comments within a week. I was very pleasantly surprised how much engagement we got as we debated back and forth with people from around the world who were employees of the company to talk about the pros and cons of their approaches. And it gave us great feedback on my team, but it's also helping to set the company direction. Reduced mean time to repair for incidents and bugs. You can get them resolved quicker, the more people you have looking at them. Increased thoroughness of the resolution. It really helps to make sure not only is the exact problem solved that was reported, but other similar ones that are, so it can be more encompassing of the Uber problem, the macro problem versus just the micro problem. Increased trust with employees. Increased trust with customers. They know what's going on. I'm always pleasantly surprised when I see customers or other users commenting on merge requests and issues. They're like, wait a second, I don't recognize this name. I'll look at it. And it's because I've never met them before. And they're not even an employee, but they're commenting on how we're dealing with licensing challenges, or what they like about a new feature, what they don't like about a new feature, what they'd like to see. And it really provides that great feedback. Also, iterative improvement. We're always looking to take what we have and slowly improve it and get it out to production over time, not slowly, quickly improve it in small chunks, so that there's nothing like actually seeing it hit production, whether that's the system itself, the product itself, or the company handbook and how we operate, to then iterate from there. We don't spend a lot of time in committees deciding things, or work groups. We do a little bit of that, but we spend most of our time actually saying, well, the rule is start with a merge request, start with a pull request. Don't start with a meeting. Don't start with a Google Doc. Don't start with a working group. Start with a merge request with what you propose and see what people have to say about it. There are some risks, of course, risk of accidental or intentional leak of confidential info, something to keep in mind. And increased collaboration. definitely can create an increased effort in vetting and responding to feedback. I mentioned that implementation of the endpoint solution. It was a lot of time. It was hours and hours and hours. With the one where we were debating different pub sub solutions, it wasn't that controversial. Like one example is I got what my team got out of it, what we wanted. Other teams are saying, wait a second, we closed the issue, but what's the overall GitLab direction on this? Like, well, that wasn't in scope, but I'd love to have a volunteer actually take the 30 or 40 comments and summarize them. And we'll see if that happens, but that does add some extra effort. When you ask for that feedback, you have to respond to it. You don't have to agree with it, but in my opinion, you really must respond to it so people are fully engaged and they feel respected and are respected. And you have their trust by telling them what you're going to do and tell them what you're not going to do. So how can you apply this? Oh, go ahead. So how can you apply this in your organization? Show the examples, show the benefits, and show the risks. Show what other companies do, what other organizations do, etc. Second, start small. Start with lower risk items before high risk items to manage the risk while showing that value. Maybe if you want to do more transparency around security vulnerabilities that you're tracking, and you're only letting the security team and the specific engineering teams that own each one see them. Perhaps start with low risk items, not medium or high risk items based on CISSP score or whatever you use. And say, okay, let's see if they get exposed accidentally to the public or to teams that shouldn't have it, but let's open it up to all of engineering and all of security perhaps. And then when you see those things, those unintended negative consequences not happen, potentially open up to higher risk things. Iteratively increase scope while documenting the outcome. So increase the scope in terms of the risk of the items, which projects, which teams, et cetera, and document the outcomes so people can know what the benefits are. Highlight where transparency improved the outcomes. This one's a little less metric based, but talk about, well, here's an issue in cross-site scripting, just making something up, where we weren't transparent about it internally, and it took this amount of time to resolve, and then 3 months later, the developers, we realized, fixed the exact problem, but didn't fix the bigger problem. Maybe they fixed cross-site scripting on one field, but not on all the fields in the page. And here's another one, also cross-site scripting. Because we were transparent about it, people ask questions like, you're fixing that one issue, are you fixing all the others? Have you considered using, get the name of the technology, but the in-browser technology to have rules to validate what you're going to allow the browser to do or not, which helps with cross-site scripting and other types of attacks. So highlight where that transparency improved outcomes and show it to people so you can get more buy-in. Lastly, don't hire Carl. Actually, that is a true story. He really did drive. It was that was not actually Carl. It's not his real name, but his real story. He really did drive his brand new sports car right through his garage. So I'm happy to take more questions and talk more today. How to contact me? The little social media links, and we're hiring. I've got a jobs page. My team's hiring Ruby on Rails, Python, Go developers, and we're hiring in many different parts of the organization. So if you're interested, check it out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Wayne. Really appreciate it. Thank you everyone for attending today.
Thanks everyone. Have a great day.